Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're setting our sights on Ashley County, Arkansas.
Right.
We're exploring the roots of a family that, well, local historian K. Brad Barfield of ACN Ashley County. Now, he calls them foundational.
The Switzers.
Yeah.
Brad considers them like the fathers and mothers of Ashley County.
Exactly. And we're drawing on Brad's work, his research, to really understand how this family got so, woven into the fabric of the county.
Yeah, and it's great material. We've got access to stuff from his research into the Ovid T. Switzer papers.
Okay.
Things like family newsletters from the early 1980s. So it's a
Yeah.
really direct line into how the family saw their own history.
That's fantastic. A real inside look.
Definitely. And Brad's work makes it clear this is a family with deep, ongoing ties right there in Ashley County. Still Ashley County-centric, as he puts it.
Absolutely. So our mission here is to sort of unpack the Switzer family story. We'll start with their origins, their early days in Ashley County.
Using Brad Barfield's essay series, From Sulphur Springs to Crosset.
That's the one, the first two parts. We want to figure out what brought them all the way from South Carolina and, how they first put down roots.
Makes sense. It's quite a journey.
Okay, let's dive in then. Where does the Switzer story in America really begin? Before Arkansas, obviously.
Well, their history here actually goes back quite a ways. Migration from German-speaking Europe to the colonies.
Okay.
And by the early 1800s, they'd settled down in South Carolina, specifically the Orangeburg district.
Orangeburg, South Carolina. So even before thinking about heading west, they were already part of that settling pattern.
Right, putting down roots in new places.
Yeah.
And it was there in Orangeburg around 1828 that Frederick Amos Switzer was born. He's pretty central to this part of the story.
Frederick Amos Switzer.
Got it.
And his parents.
Roseanne Brandenburg and Frederick Switzer Sr. And here's a fascinating bit, actually.
Oh, yeah.
The father, Frederick Sr., he served in the War of 1812, was even at the Battle of New Orleans.
Wow. Really? The Battle of New Orleans.
Yep. So you imagine that experience, being part of the nation's early struggles, probably shaped the family's outlook. Resilience, maybe a willingness to push boundaries.
That's a serious connection to early American history right there. Okay, so they were in Orangeburg, but they didn't stay put there either.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
In 1835, the family moved, went to Spartanburg County, still in South Carolina.
Spartanburg?
And that area became, well, a real hub for the Switzers. So much so that eventually a community called Switzer, South Carolina, popped up.
A town named after them.
Pretty much tells you how established they became in that region, doesn't it? Built a real network there.
Definitely speaks volumes. Okay, so Spartanburg County. And that's where Frederick Amos, the son of the war veteran, that's where he met his wife.
Exactly. In 1853, he married Julia Frances Drummond.
Julia Frances Drummond.
And this marriage, it was pretty significant. Julia's father was Reverend Warren Drummond. Her mother was Margaret Peggy Snoddy.
Reverend Drummond.
Yeah.
Influential.
Very. He was a well-known Baptist minister, kind of a patriarch figure in the South Carolina upcountry.
The upcountry. That's like the inland hillier part.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Contrasting with the coastal lowcountry.
Yeah.
So marrying into the Drummond family, it connected the Switzers to this really established, respected family.
Mm-hmm.
Gave them social standing,
Okay, so Frederick Amos and Julia, they're well settled, connected in South Carolina society.
Right.
So what makes them decide to just pack up and head west to Arkansas, of all places?
Oh, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The mid-1850s South, it was complicated.
Yeah.
There was prosperity, sure, but also, growing tension, talk of war. But at the same time,
Yeah.
you had these stories filtering back from the West, especially Arkansas. Tales of just vast, fertile land available, opportunity.
The pull of the frontier. A chance to build something new, maybe?
That seems to be it. So in 1859, literally on the cusp of the Civil War, they decide to go for it, head west.
Just before everything erupted.
Precisely. And Brad Barfield, in his writing, he really emphasizes this point. It seems less like they were fleeing something.
Right.
And more like they were proactively choosing to build a new future, chasing an opportunity.
That says a lot about their mindset, their ambition.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it echoes, what Brad Barfield highlights about the family's continued presence and commitment to Ashley County today, that belief in Arkansas's potential.
Okay, so let's picture it. December 1859, Frederick Amos Switzer shows up. He's got 1,200 acres in what will eventually be Ashley County. What's it like there?
Well, it's not like today. Not at all. Crosset, the town, didn't exist.
Right.
It was mostly just undeveloped pine forest, really remote. But the specific spot had a couple of interesting things going for it.
Like what?
There was a sulfur spring nearby,
Mm-hmm.
had a local reputation, supposedly had healing
The
properties.
healing spring. Okay.
And adding a bit of frontier color, there were stories about an old bandit hideout nearby from the 1830s, a guy named Marion.
Huh. Outlaws and healing springs? Sounds like the Wild West, almost. So definitely not moving into a ready-made town.
Not even close.
What were the first things they had to deal with, the immediate challenges?
Just basic survival, really. First off, shelter, building rough log cabins,
Right.
then clearing land. Acres and acres of forest needed to become farmland and supplies. That was a huge challenge.
How'd they manage that?
The main lifeline was a steamboat from New Orleans, but it only came once a year.
Once a year, you'd have to plan everything way in advance.
Exactly. Imagine that. And remember, it wasn't just Frederick Amos and Julia. Their young kids were with them. Warren, Pierce, and Maddie.
Wow. Starting completely from scratch with a young family. But it sounds like Frederick Amos wasn't just thinking about subsistence farming.
No, definitely not.
Oh.
And this is what's really remarkable, I think, very early on, soon after arriving.
Yeah.
He gets this idea and starts building a steam-powered grist mill right there on the land that would become Sulphur Springs.
A steam mill. Out there. Already.
Yes. It wasn't just about feeding his own family. It shows he was thinking bigger. Commerce, community, attracting other people.
That's incredible foresight.
It really is. It's that kind of foundational thinking that Brad Barfield points to when he talks about their long-term impact in Ashley County.
So the mill was a huge step. What else was he doing to kind of tame the wilderness, so to speak?
Well, infrastructure. He
Mhm.
started carving out roads through the woods.
Just him.
Initially, yeah. Probably just rough tracks at first, for hauling lumber from the mill, connecting parts of his property. But those were the first steps towards a real transportation network.
Building the literal groundwork.
And his farming, apparently quite successful. There's a report, Brad mentions it, of his wheat yielding 33 bushels an acre.
33 bushels. That's impressive for back then, isn't it?
Very impressive. Shows his hard work, but also, the richness of that Ashley County land.
So it wasn't just timber country then. The land itself had potential.
Oh, yeah. The whole area was naturally rich. You had the Waukita River nearby.
Which had its own history, right?
Absolutely. Long before settlers like the Switzers, the Caddo, and Quapaw people used it, it was their highway, their resource. Plus, the soil had minerals, there was abundant wildlife, wild foods in the forest.
So it was undeveloped from a settler's perspective, but it was a land with a deep history and inherent wealth.
Exactly. It wasn't an empty land, just a differently utilized one.
Okay, so wrapping up this first phase. The Switzers arrive in Ashley County, not by accident, but by choice.
A deliberate choice,
Yeah.
made by people with real ambition.
Facing serious challenges, but they don't just hunker down. They immediately start building, laying foundations.
Right. That mill, the roads, the successful farming,
Yeah.
it all points to them coming to stay, to build something lasting.
A legacy that, as K. Brad Barfield notes, is still very much alive in Ashley County.
Precisely. They got there just before the war, but they'd already started making their mark in Sulphur Springs, laying the groundwork for what was to come.
It really paints a picture, thinking about that journey, from South Carolina, leaving an established life.
Yeah. Arriving in the Arkansas wilderness, and then almost immediately, boom, building a steam mill. It really shows they weren't just settlers, they were pioneers in the truest sense.
Builders?
That steam mill detail,
Mm.
for me, that's a real aha moment. It's not just about claiming land. It's about creating industry, creating a focal point
Yeah.
so early on.
And that's a remote place.
It speaks volumes about that entrepreneurial spirit, that deep belief they must have had in the potential of that spot.
Absolutely. And you see how that kind of early vision, that hard work from families like the Switzers, it really did shape the communities we live in now.
Definitely.
Understanding these origin stories, like the one Brad Barfield has researched for the Switzers, it gives you real context for Ashley County today, doesn't it? You understand the roots.
It really does.
Mhm.
And it makes you think, what kind of courage, what kind of vision does it actually take
Mm.
to leave everything familiar behind and just start over in the wilderness
Yeah.
like they did in the 1850s?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine.
And maybe think about how that spirit, that willingness to build and invest, how does that continue, or does it continue, in our communities today?
That's a great question to ponder, and thinking about the Switzers makes you wonder. What other stories, what other hidden histories are waiting to be uncovered right there in Ashley County or, in your own community?
Layers upon layers of history.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the early history of the Switzer family, a family Brad Barfield rightly identifies as having a profound and lasting impact on Ashley County.
And we'll definitely be exploring more of their story and Ashley County's rich history, drawing on Brad's work in the future.
Looking forward to it.